أيوة. What is the next step في رأيكم يعني? What are you going to do next?
Getting the approval to proceed.
To proceed doing what?
In data collection.
This is second. لكن الأولى قبل الداتا collection. From whom are you going to collect data?
The sample.
Sample. What do you know about taking a sample? What do you know about sampling? Anybody? المجال مفتوح يا جماعة للمشاركات على أساس ننتظر الباقيين يدخلوا يعني. Anybody? أيوة صالح واصل.
They need to be representative to the whole population.
تمام. طيب عشان تتأكد إنهم representative, how do you do it?
We set criteria, for example, demographics.
أيوة ممتاز. بتعمل
specific cases and.
مشكلة selection criteria أصلاً من الأول. Who is going to be involved? لكن بعد كده دي population. I define the population. يعني population نفسها معناها شنو؟ معناها a collection of items or people with a shared common characteristic. common characteristic دي ممكن تكون one thing, ممكن تكون many things. يعني ممكن تكون young adults with diabetes. ده هنا انت حددت ال characteristics of the population. فإذا أنت في حاجة المرحلة الأولى you define very clearly the population. والpopulation نفسها بيعرفوها يعني either the entire population ولا حاجة اسمها the accessible population. Accessible يعني the population that you can access. You define that and then you select you calculate a sample size. مش كده؟ You need to calculate a sample size. والكلام ده في الموديول الأول كان موجود أونلاين إلى الآن. فأنت you decide on or you calculate the sample size. Then you decide which type of sampling technique you are going to apply. Is it a probability sampling ولا a non-probability sampling? البروبابيلتي سامبلينجز هي الناس بتتكلم عنها عادة اللي هي يعني شنو probability sampling؟ معناها السامبلينج اللي زي ما انت تفضلت is representative يعني representative of a population وعليه أشهر أنواع البروبابيلتي سامبلينج أفتكر بتعرفوه لكن دايرين نعرفه بنقول عليه simple random sampling. عنده تعريفين، تعريف بالمعنى وتعريف بالطريقة. المعنى يعني شنو random sampling؟ معناها أول حاجة مش عرفنا البوبيوليشن والaccessible population إنه we select a sample in a way that each individual or item in the population have يعني each one has an equal chance of being selected. يعني الطريقة بتاعتك تضمن إنه you guarantee that all the items or individuals in the population have an equal chance, of being selected. دي الديفينيشن. الطريقة إنه you do it in a way to guarantee this. وأسهل طريقة مش أسهل طريقة، الطريقة المعترف بها universally إنه you use a computer application to randomly select your sample. ونحن وريناكم عندنا البرنامج اللي وريناكم له Open API بتقول له I need a sample of أنا عندي 1000 participant في البوبيوليشن I want to select 100 ويقوم يعمل لك random selection. لكن these computer applications are designed based on statistical data. والstatistical data دي عادة زمان قبل الكمبيوترز والكمبيوتر applications كانت ما put in what we know the random numbers tables. فأنت زمان كانوا الناس بيستخدموا the random number tables. قاموا المبرمجين برمجوا random number tables in the computer applications, وعليه people now are using computer applications. Once you say when you say I use the computer application خلاص الناس ما عندهم معك كلام. This is random sampling واسمها simple random sampling. لكن but it's not always possible. أو sometimes you need to do sampling not simply ولكن بطريقة in a way which a little bit different, taking into consideration certain factors. For example, you might go for structured random sampling. بمعنى هو random and I will pick the first item, then I will say I am going to pick each fifth. فده بسموه systematic random sampling. Systematic random sampling. Sometimes the structure يكون إنه I divide the population into strata. كل واحد is a stratum or a layer. وأقوم آخذ simple random sample from each layer. فده بسموه I forgot the word لكن بتجيني stratified random sampling or another term I will remember. Sometimes وبعد كده انت من كل استراتيجي بتاخد. sometimes يقولوا quota. انت you determine a quota. يعني تقول انا عندي مثلا في الرياض مثلا 100 مدرسه ثانويه، انا هاخذ من كل مدرسه a random sample يمثل 10% of the population of the school. فهنا انا حددت quota لكل مدرسه. في مستوى اخر انه انا I am going to cluster المدارس. اقول انا مدارس الرياض is a cluster، مدارس الدمام is another cluster، مدارس الوير is another cluster، ومن كل cluster I will take a random sample of schools، ومن كل school selected I will take a random sample of that school. ده هنا اسمه ده هنا انا عملت شنو؟ انا قلت انا هقسمه لكلاستر بسموه cluster sampling. All of these types of sampling اللي اسمها probability sampling واسمها random sampling. الاول simple والباقيات دي كلهم structured sampling من السيستماتيك والstratified والكوتا والكلاستر. ديل كلهم different types of structured sampling other than the simple random. There are other types of sampling منهم اللي هم non-probability. هنا أنا في أهم واحد بيستعملوه الناس عادة اسمه convenience sampling. convenience sampling إنه أنا I take a sample from people who are close to me who are not appropriate ولكنه convenience. and other types of sampling. أنا شايف عدد الناس بقت معقول شوية. فافتكر دي نحن ناقشنا موضوع لانه الموضوع ده كان المفروض نناقشه في السيشن وحصلت تكنيكال ديفيكولتيز وما قدرنا نناقش موضوع السامبلينج في ذات particular session. الحاجه الثانيه مع in relation to the conduction of research you also need to know after you identify the sample, you select the sample. بقى عندي 100 شخص. I need to collect the data. فالداتا collection قد يسبق intervention. إذا كان interventional research, you carry out your intervention, whatever that intervention is, and then you actually measure the outcome of this intervention if it's an experimental study. Or you go straight and collect the data if it is an observational. The observational study, you just collect the data. Is a questionnaire مثلا ولا focus group discussion. الكويستشنير ممكن يكون اونلاين، ممكن يكون فيس تو فيس، يعني بيسموه انترفيو في هذه الحاله and so on. So you intervene or you experiment, then you collect the data. لما تعمل الثلاثه when you finish doing these three major things in relation to the conduction of research انت بتكون جمعت الداتا. Again after you finish your proposal في 3 major steps. الستيب الأولى selecting a sample. selecting a sample. Sampling, عندنا sample size وعندنا sampling techniques. عملنا مقدمة سريعة sampling techniques. After you select the sample, if there is an intervention, you carry out the intervention. And if you have medicines to give, you give the medicines to the groups, and then wait for the outcome to happen, and then you measure the result or the outcome of the intervention. If there is no intervention, it's an observation study, you go ahead and collect the data. في الحالتين, whether it's interventional or experimental or observational, now you have the data. ومن هنا يبدأ الكورس حقنا this new module. الموديول اللي نحن داخلين عليه ده the module we are now starting today is about what you are going to do with this data. أنا at this junction, let me share my screen. الجدول بتكونوا شفتوه طبعا. You have already saw the timetable in the if you have not, it's found on the learning management system. And today, our second session is going to be allowing you to log in. If any of you cannot log in, we will be here to help all of you to log in. Today, all of you must log in. And by the way, let me go back. When you log in, you will find the opening page. Let me wait for the opening page. ايوه في الاوبننج بيج طبعا بالنسبه لي انا الاوبننج بيج is different, لكن انت على طول you will go into this research methodology winter camp, and this is the program. The first page at the top you will find the module program. You click on the book, it will open the program. These are the objectives, this is the description, and these are the objectives. The program starts now, and in about 10 minutes, we finish this introduction. And then I will give you a chance. You will have a whole hour to actually log in and explore and navigate the learning management system. I will be around. If you have any difficulty, then you can use the chat to tell us why you have a difficulty. You can share your screen, and we can help you log into the website or to the learning material. Now, the program this time is 4 days because the university has a major event on Wednesday. So we reorganized the table so that it finishes in 4 days. Starting today, Monday and Tuesday, then we will have Wednesday at a break, and then we will finish on Thursday. في كل البرنامج موجود لكل واحد، ولكن as you know now, it is completely at a distance, synchronous lectures and asynchronous activities. Well, activities, by the way, are minimized. It's mainly resources. It's mainly resources. But the most important activities are some recorded material as a resource, some quizzes, some recorded materials with quizzes, and you need to go through all of them because this is monitored and your attendance will depend on you using these activities and resources. So for example, today, after logging in, you will have a webinar at 12:30 with Professor Kasuli. In the meantime, you will go and watch the recorded materials about variables and data. And then Professor Omar Kasuli will actually discuss with you what you have already seen in the recorded material. And after you finish that lecture or webinar with Professor Kasuli, there is some reading and quiz material which are online, so you can also attempt. So this is the program for today. It is very light. It's lightweight. After we finish this introduction, we will give you the chance to ask questions. Then I will wait for you to log in. I already have the website open, and I will be monitoring who logs in and who cannot, and then we can help those who cannot log in to log in. And then what you are going to find other than this table. And by the way, the second day, is all about preparing data. And since you have not collected data yet, we will use ready-made data to show you how you prepare data for analysis, because this is a very important part. If data is not well prepared, then producing the results will not be easy. So we will spend a whole day actually preparing data. We will help you through a process of entering data into an Excel file. We will show you how you collect data through a Google form. And then we will show you how you enter data into an SPSS file. So tomorrow, the whole day will be about preparing data for analysis and the production of results. Now, on the third day, how are you going to produce, to organize data and produce something presentable? And this something which is presentable can be a table, and it can be a graph. So the third day is about how you produce tables and graphs from data which is already entered into SPSS or Excel. And by the way, at this junction, we want you all before Tuesday to download SPSS, a trial version. You download a trial version, you can use it for training. But the university already prepared 10 computers in Computer Lab 1 with SPSS. So anytime you have time to come and exercise, and also you can use these computers for the analysis of your data. And by the way, they are in Lab 1, and my office is in Lab 1, and also Professor Kasuli is ready to help if anybody has got any problem. Also, we have our colleagues, Afnan al-Shihri, Raid, Hamarna, and Yazid. They are all willing to help you if you have any problems. Professor Kasuli will have his own research clinic. And for this particular module, we will have a data analysis clinic. Hassan, including Ustaz Hassan, myself, Afnan, Raid, and Yazid. If you come to the lab and you have any problem, you can contact us and we can come and help you with that. So please download the trial version of SPSS, install it in a laptop. And from tomorrow, we expect you to use your laptop, not your telephone. And we also would like if you can open your camera so that the interaction is complete. We would like to sometimes see the reactions and see your interaction. Now, the last day, the first part of the third day is about data organization and presentation. And then the second half of the day will be about what is known as descriptive statistics. And this will start with a webinar by Professor Omar Kasuli, and then we will have a virtual practical session about descriptive statistics. Now, the last day is about what is known as inferential statistics. And by the way, there is a very short 4 minutes video about this classification. What is descriptive statistics and what is inferential statistics? I advise you to watch that video because it paves the way for your understanding of this statistics course. So, there is a webinar in the morning by Professor Kasuli about inferential statistics. Then we will try three of these, not three actually. We will have another webinar about hypothesis testing, and then we will try this hypothesis testing using the chi-square and the student's t-test, a virtual practical session. Then you will have another webinar about correlation and regression for those who are interested in doing more sophisticated analysis. And then we will have a virtual practical session on correlation and regression. So this will be the last day of the module. We have 2 more minutes if you have any questions, and then we will start to log in to the website. Do you have any questions? I will stop the sharing for now. Any questions? Well, or I give you the chance to actually log in. Okay. Can you please start now logging in? Let me just count. مشاعل, صالح, لينا, ميمونة, وئام, فيصل, رؤى, somebody, iPhone, شوق, Sarah, Farah, Razan, Fatima, Ilham, and Yara. Okay, please, now you can log in and I will be watching and waiting. If you have any problem, then post the problem in the chat. And I will be waiting for you. I want to make sure that all the 15 people attending this webinar can actually log in. So go ahead. Bismillah.
Or from now, discrete variables are those variables that are based on counting. Continuous variables are those based on measurement. This is very important because all the statistical tests that we do depend on this. Like the discrete variable, we use the chi-square test. For the continuous variable, we use the t-test. So you need to understand this difference if you have to apply the correct tests. Now, one way to tell discrete from continuous, that a continuous can be a fractional decimal, but the discrete is only whole numbers because it's based on counting 1 to 3. So those are basic ideas. Now, let me talk about the idea of statistical distribution. I will not go into details about this. When we measure or count and graph what we count, put it on a graph, that becomes a statistical distribution. And there are many statistical distributions, but you need to remember that the statistical test that you carry out depends on the type of statistical distribution that you have. Only you need to remember this. The rest is details. Statistical distribution is when you graph, you put a random variable, either by measurement or by counting, on a graph paper. Now, I want to talk more about the qualitative variables. These are the non-numerical variables. They don't use numbers, just description, wasfiyya. Qualitative variables can be nominal, ordinal, or ranked, okay? A nominal qualitative variable is when you just give somebody a name without any ordering, like you say man, woman, animal, human, car. See, those are qualitative descriptions. Ordinal is when you make a qualitative description, but there is an element of ordering which is above the other. Like you say, bachelor's degree, master's degree, PhD. These are qualitative descriptions. They are not measured, they are not counted, but we know that one is above the other. So when there is a sense of ordering, we call it ordinal. Rank is when you describe a situation that you arrange observations in order. Like you say, people ran, and who was the first one, the second one, the third one in the race, a car race or a motorcycle race or a foot race. So the qualitative variables are 3 types, as we said. Nominal, you just give a name without ordering. Ordinal has got a sense of ordering. And ranked, that's when there is like a competition and you see who is first, second, and third. So those are qualitative variables. Remember, qualitative variables have no numbers. Now we'll talk about quantitative variables. These are numerical. They have numbers. We'll start by talking about the discrete ones. Remember, we said quantitative variables can be discrete or continuous. Discrete is when you count 1, 2, 3, 4 boys or girls or cars, and continuous is when you measure height in centimeters, weight in kilograms. Now, the discrete random variables are several. It depends on the way you count. Now, you are not supposed to know the details of this at this stage, but I just want you to make sure that when you come across these words, Bernoulli, binomial, multinomial, negative binomial, Poisson, geometric, when you see them in a scientific paper, you just know, well, these are description of variables. You don't need to know what they are, but don't get surprised. Don't run to your dictionary. Okay. Now, each of these has got its own statistical distribution. Each variable, there is a way you count, and the way you count tells you what variable it is. When you draw it on a graph, it becomes a statistical distribution. I'll just give you an example of the binomial. Binomial discrete variable is when you are throwing a coin and throw again and throw again, and you count how many times you get the head up. That is called success. So when you throw 2 times, you see how many times you got the head up, maybe 1 or nothing or 2. You throw 5 times, how many of those are successes? You get the head up. And then you keep on plotting it on a graph like this. When you throw 1 time, you get this. When you throw so many times, you get this. So when you draw it on a graph, you get a statistical distribution. This is called a binomial distribution, and it is used in statistical analysis. So these are discrete random variables based on counting. They can become statistical distributions when you draw them on a graph. Maybe I stop. If you have a really burning question, please write it in the chat so that I can answer it before proceeding too much. Write in the chat and I will answer you. Okay. So I have talked about quantitative variables, means numerical, but they are discrete based on counting. Now I want to talk about quantitative variables. These are numerical, but they are based on measurement. When based on measurement, they are called continuous random variables. And also there are several of these variables depending on how you do the counting. Now, you are not expected at this stage to know the details of this, but you need to know the words. When you see it, don't run to the dictionary. You just know, Prof. Omar told us that's a type of distribution. It can be normal, it can be exponential, can be uniform, or can be artificial. Like the chi-square test, you will see it in statistics a lot. It's a distribution. The T is a distribution. The F is a distribution. You are not supposed to know how these are distributions, but you need to know these words refer to distributions so that when you are reading a scientific paper, you do not get stuck. Just say, yes, I know this is a type of distribution. I'll just talk about one of the continuous distributions, which is called the normal distribution. See, when you measure weight or height, whatever you measure, and plot on a graph, here on the graph, you plot the weight and height that you get, and up there you plot the number of people who have got that height. You join the points, it will turn out to be like this. This is called the normal distribution. This is the commonest distribution. Most things that we deal with in life are normally distributed. Most things we deal with in life are normally distributed, like height. Most people here in the middle, that's the average height. A few people are very tall towards the end, and a few people are very short towards the end, but the majority are in the center. That's what we call a normal distribution. It's one of the constants of nature. The exponential, on the other hand, is also numerical based on measurement. That's when, as you count, the number decreases. Exponential decreases as you measure more and more and more. And this happens in biological systems. So I have talked about the normal and the exponential as examples of continuous distributions. I have got a question here. What is the difference between ordinal and ranked? Well, the ordinal, there is an order who is above the other, but that is determined from the beginning. We all know that bachelor's is below master's and master's below PhD. Ranked is not predetermined. It's about competition. People run, and then we see who is number one, number two, number three. So the order in ordinal is prefixed. In ranked, it comes after the action. They look very similar, but that's the slight difference between them. Okay, now we have talked about qualitative variables. These are based on description, wasfiyya. We've talked about quantitative variables. These are numerical. They are based on measurement or based on counting. Now we want to talk about something else about continuous random variables. These are measured either on the interval scale or the ratio scale. If you forget about what I will say about the interval scale, you will not have lost much, because 99.999 of what we measure is on the ratio scale. The interval scale is used only in two things: the calendar, the years, like this year we are 2022, is on the interval scale. The temperature, whether Celsius or Fahrenheit, is on the interval scale. Those are the only two things that are on the interval scale. That's why I'm saying, if you forget it, you are not going to lose much. Everything else that we measure in continuous variables is on the ratio scale. The difference between the interval and ratio is very simple. In the interval scale, 0 is arbitrary, it has no meaning. You notice that the Gregorian year, the Christian year, is 2022, 2022 years since they started counting. But the Islamic year is 1443, it's 1,400 and so many years, because it started counting from the time of Hijrah. The Indian Tamil calendar is 4,000 years because they started at different time. The Chinese calendar is 7,000 years because they have had a very old civilization. They started counting years a long time ago. So the interval scale, the 0 is arbitrary. You fix your 0 and another one fixes it 0. In the ratio scale, 0 has a biological meaning. If someone has got 0 weight, they are dead, they don't exist. 0 is real on the ratio scale. And as I said, everything we measure is on the ratio scale except the calendar and the temperature that are on the interval scale. Now, when you have a random variable, there are 6 properties, 6 things you need to know about it. You need to know the expectation. Expectation is the average. What's the average height? you need to know the variance. I know what's the average height, but what's the variation of people? How many are above and below? You need to know the variance, the dispersion from the average. Covariance is when you have got two variables and you want to compare their variance. That's called covariance. So these are three properties. You will see expectation a lot as the average. You will see variance a lot. You're not going to see covariance at your level. It's not a very common description. Now, the fourth description of variables is correlation. We'll be doing correlation in this course. You want to see, is height and weight, are they related? Like, you know, in this graph, up vertical axis is weight, horizontal axis is height. When you plot the heights and weights of different people, it's on a line. It shows that they are correlated. The second graph, they are correlated, but not very strongly. The last graph here, there's no correlation at all. So correlation tells us what things relate to one another. Usually height and weight are strongly correlated. The taller you are, the heavier you are going to be. And this is because our big bones carry a lot of our weight. So taller people are heavier. So there's correlation between height and weight. Now, as we talked about distributions, when you plot a random variable on a graph, you get various shapes. The shape in the middle here is the normal. It is symmetrical. The average is in the middle, and then there are people above the average and people below the average. So this is the normal. But sometimes it is skewed. Negative skewed means it is deviated to the left. That is negatively skewed. Sometimes it's skewed, like in this one, to the right. That's called a positive skew. So the fifth way of describing random variables talk about their skewness. Do they tilt this way or tilt that way? If they are not skewed, then they are normal. That's what is in the center. But as I told you, normal is the commonest. Most things you measure are in the center. And I think this is one of the constants, Sunanullah fil Kaun, that things follow a normal distribution. The last property that we talk about variable is kurtosis. Again, when you plot it on a graph, kurtosis tells you how sharp is the center. See, if it's normal, it's like this. If it is high kurtosis, it's very sharp. If it's less kurtosis, more flat, negative kurtosis. So there are 6 properties of a random variable. Whenever we talk about it, we have to say, what is its average? What's its variance? What's the covariance? What's the correlation? What's the skewness? And what is the kurtosis? Now, as we do practical things, you will come to understand this terminology more. I know when we just talk like now, it may go into one ear and out through the other ear. But when we do the practical and you get data put in the computer and it produces these shapes, then you will remember what was said in the lecture and it will become very clear to you. The last thing I want to say is that variables can be transformed. For example, quantitative variable, this is numeric. You can transform it into qualitative, descriptive. Like you can just say, okay, people above 100 centimeters in height, I'm going to call them tall. Those below 100, I'm going to call them short. Now, tall and short are qualitative descriptions. But in the beginning, we started with a quantitative variable, which is height. So we can transform a quantitative into a qualitative, a descriptive one. We can also transform qualitative variables into quantitative ones. This happens, but it's not desirable. It's not desirable. People do it, but it's not desirable. Like in research, there is what we call the leakage scale. You ask someone, do you like swimming? Tell me on a scale of 5. 1, I don't like it. 2, I hate but not so much. 3, I'm not so sure. 4, I like it. 5, I like it a lot. So these are descriptions, qualitative descriptions, but we're using numbers. We say number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. So we are turning a qualitative variable into a quantitative one. But we don't like to do this because quantitative is more accurate. Qualitative is less accurate. If you make qualitative into quantitative, you are making it appear more accurate than it should be. Now, we also have got continuous variables. Variables based on measurement can be transformed into discrete. You can say that people with height from 50 to 80, I will give them number 1. From 80 to 120, I'll give the number 2. From 120 to 150, I'll give them number 3. So we can make them discrete. So these transformations do occur. What we want to say is that science depends mostly on quantitative variables, variables based on measurement and on counting because they are more accurate. Qualitative variables, these are descriptive or sphere, they are less accurate, but we use them in research because some things cannot be measured. You cannot measure love. You cannot measure hatred. You cannot measure interest in music. You cannot measure interest in traveling. These are qualitative things. They are important. They are part of our life. So because we need to do research on them, we have to use qualitative variables to describe them. But when we are doing hard science in medicine and engineering, we will depend on the quantitative variables. So inshallah, we'll stop here and we have a few minutes for questions. You can write your question, and since you are few also, you can unmute and ask directly. Okay, we don't have questions so far. Let me just summarize. Life has to do with the changes. Everything changes. Your weight, your height, your wealth, your moods. In order to describe the changes, we use variables. Variables are things that describe the changes. Now, these variables may be quantitative. They have numbers. Or they may be qualitative. These are descriptions in words. Okay. So the quantitative ones, those that have numbers, are based either on counting, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 boys, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cars, or they are based on measurement, measurement of height, measurement of weight. So those are the quantitative ones. Qualitative ones are descriptive. There are also types. There is the nominal, when you just describe. There is the ordinal, when you describe with an implied sense of ordering. One is above the other. And rank has to do with competition. Who comes first, who comes second, who comes third. Now, the quantitative variables can be plotted on a graph. And when you plot them, the figure that you get is called a statistical distribution. Now, each variable has got a different distribution. And each distribution uses a different statistical test. That's why I said this lecture is very important, because as you go through statistics, you will have data you want to analyze and you have to choose what test statistic to use. You need to know what type of variable you have. If you cannot distinguish among types of variables, you cannot choose the right statistical test. Inshallah, now we have come to the end, and thank you very much. We'll be meeting again in other lectures. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Thank you very much, Professor Omar. I have an announcement. This lecture and the previous one will be posted in the website in, say, about half an hour. And then you need to go through it again, because in the evening I am going to post a quiz about this same lecture. And after the lecture, I am going to post some reading material. So please watch the lecture again, go through the reading material, prepare yourself for the quiz, which is going to be posted in the evening. Thank you very much, and we will see you tomorrow.